Strong Dads wants to thank Quality Auto Mart for joining us as a sponsor. Quality Auto Mart was born in 1985. They are owned and operated by Mark and Nancy Repke. Quality Auto Mart provides all the services, repairs, and maintenance for your vehicle's needs with a 3-year auto parts and labor warranty. They offer complimentary vehicle safety inspection and estimates. Also, they offer a shuttle service, and the 4th oil change is always on them. They are located at 7307 on State Road 46 in Batesville, Indiana. Make sure you give them a call at 812-934-2301.
Welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merle Hutchinson alongside Kyle Crawford for another great show. Kyle, you sound like crap. What's wrong with you?
I got some congestion going on up here. And
yeah, you think it was from you were fighting fire in a black mold environment or something? What happened?
Something like that. One of our firehouses has maybe some mold problems. So yeah, I didn't feel so hot after getting that. So now I'm living off of cough drops and some like nasal thing that I now know has addictive.
Great. So
it's a little addictive. So I'm just like sniffing this thing all the time.
So as we speak, Kyle's buzzing.
So if you see me walking around with like this big white tube in my nose on either side, that's why.
You're sick, man. You're sick.
That's gonna be a year from now. I'm still gonna be hitting this thing. I'm not gonna have any congestion. I'm just like, why not?
You won't have any brain either. But what else?
That's
is
secondary.
Right. All right. So, man, we're going deep today.
Oh, boy. What's that mean?
We're going deep. We're going deep.
What the
heck? Why were you even born? Why were you created?
First off, not very nice. But I'm assuming there's got to be a follow-up to this.
Oh, no. That's how I'm going with right there.
I'm not sure what you're getting at here.
Yeah. Oh. I wonder what your mom would say about that. Like, why? Well, my Kyle, he was born for, like Mary said, my son was born to be a savior. I don't know about your son.
Yeah, that's true. Man, already on it today. This is our first show of the new year. You're throwing. I think the kids nowadays say you're throwing shade.
Shade?
You're throwing shade at me.
So my son the other day said, "Why are you capping on me?"
Oh, that's an old.
That's kind of old.
That's old.
Yeah, he was like, "Why are you capping on me?"
Throwing shade is, I think that's what
throwing shade
or low key. That was you're throwing shade. I think that. See, I could get in on
You are too cool, man. You are too cool. All right. Well, we are going to talk about something pretty cool. Actually, I'll prompt a little bit of this. So again, in my day work, I do a lot of coaching, and I do a lot of coaching of men. I do couple coaching. I do a male coaching, and I get a share of teenage boys. And the number of teenage boys that I get, the crazy thing about that is, I will just say, I don't know, 80, 90% come from a very broken father situation. Okay, very broken father situation. Maybe dad's not even involved. Mom's been raising the kid on his own. Or if dad is involved, dad's not a very good dude. So anyway, I get the opportunity. But, I had the opportunity, and I'm working with a kid who basically is like, I'm not even quite sure why I'm created. I'm not quite sure what my purpose is. And so we did a show not too long ago, several months back, about purpose. And today we're going to talk not just about our purpose, although I think some of our show today is definitely going to hit home with us as men as we listen to this.
Yep.
But I actually want to write and then talk about this like from a dad perspective, with the idea of, holy cow, if the father of these teenage boys that I work with, if they knew this as to what was happening to their sons now that they're teenagers and young adult men, I wonder if they would have got their head out of their rear end and done a better job earlier. And, the scary thing is, I know one of the questions I always ask is, I say, tell me your dad's story. And so that's how I hear about this. And then I have gone on and learned to say, tell me his dad's story.
Yep.
And I'm just telling you, like, it's kind of almost hands down the generational curse here that, his dad was an alcoholic or his dad wasn't involved. And so part of what we really want to get into today is how do we help our kids know what they're created for? And again, it's going to really leak into us as well. Like you can do the same practices. But anyway, that's kind of the deal. And I don't know if we'll find out why you were created or not, but we're going to try. How about thanking some people here?
Man, hard on it.
Hey, when you're sick, I just kick you, man.
That's fine. I like it. Anyways, Strong Dads, we would love to thank Casey Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of us. Really do appreciate them. Man, I drove by there. They got an unbelievable facility up there off of State Line Road. Go check them out. Let them know we sent you up there. Really do appreciate Casey Outdoor Solutions for being a Strong Dad sponsor.
All right. Very cool. We also want to thank Quality Auto Mart, located outside of Batesville, Indiana on Route 46. Officially, Mark and Nancy Repke have turned over the keys to their new ownership, which is actually just a gentleman that has always been working there. His name is Fred. And so we want to welcome Fred on to the podcast and the sponsoring in terms of just being part of the backup crew to support what we do. So for all your automotive needs and golf cart needs, they do a huge 50% of their business is golf cart work.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so for any of those needs, go out and see Quality Auto Mart located out on Route 46 outside of Batesville, Indiana.
Good deal. You know, Merle, I as we were kind of getting into this, I know I've said this quote before. I believe it's from Mark Twain. I'm fairly certain it's him. If it's not, you can let me know. But the quote says that the two most important days in a man's life are the day he was born and the day he figures out why. Yeah. And, man, I think that just is a great segue right into this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've actually talked about that before. And because, we've done some shows on purpose. And again, like we said, this is going to be the idea of not just purpose for you, but like, oh, crud, how do I help my kids with this? All right. And there's a couple different assumptions that I think I want to make sure that we get right. When I work with people, you have to come in with the idea that all people are born for a purpose. Like all people are valuable. And that's hard to do because sometimes you see dudes who are just off the tracks, criminal, bad, evil. You see all this and you go, well, that dude's worthless. But when you're working with people, you kind of have to have this presupposition that, no, everybody's got value. And the reason why that's important to point out is because that's not how we're trained, actually. We're trained that certain people rank higher than other people in terms of value. And our school system, which I supported and was active in for 32 years, our school system is one of the worst at violating, not, I don't think on purpose, it is just by the design of violating this principle. And the idea here is, no, every school will say all kids are important, but that's not actually how their curriculum and their day-to-day works. If you are good at math and reading and writing, you are going to get your pats on the back, you're going to get your praises, and you're going to be held up. If you are not good, okay, if you're a Kyle Crawford who wants to be out climbing trees and building things and building fires, putting fires out, you're not going to be held up as, man, he's one of the valued kids in my room. And so I just say that, like, okay, from the get-go, you have to understand how you view people. And in my world, like, I have to view, even if I don't like the personality of a person, because you can always bump heads in those directions, but you have to be able to say, okay, like, this guy's every bit as valuable as I am. You have to be able to say that.
Do you think that just what you were speaking on as far as the school system goes, do you think that directly correlates to the increase in anxiety and depression that our adolescents are facing?
In a huge way. I mean, you got to listen to me here because I'm reporting this from what I actually see, not just, I can read this in a book, by the way, because now there's actually lots of good research to indicate it. But what you are seeing in the coronavirus, the whole COVID thing, that really just exemplified even more this problem. But the idea here is if I don't do good in stuff, right? Like if I'm not good at writing or I'm not good at reading or math or whatever, I don't do good, then I will have confusion. And confusion is like, well, I don't really know what I'm good at. I don't really know what I'm here for. And just think about that in the sense of if you're driving in a totally unfamiliar place and you had no GPS wasn't invented. But you can't even imagine that, but I can imagine that.
Yeah.
And GPS wasn't even invented. Eventually you're going to get exhausted at taking blind turns. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll try to get out this way. Well, maybe I'll take a right. Maybe I'll take a left. Maybe I just need to go a little farther. But eventually when you go in a circle long enough, you get so frustrated. And so mental frustration and confusion results in depression. All right. And so the ultimate form of that depression is when we start to say there's no hope. So imagine you just being out lost in the woods and you've been out there for 3 days and you've walked and walked and walked and you're tired and you're exhausted. And at some point, you may go, I just give up hope. I'm just going to fall on the ground here and maybe somebody will find me.
Yeah.
All right. So you're right. The idea here of our teens, especially our boys who have not had good leadership, are very much falling into this lack of guidance, and their old GPS is not working well.
Yeah.
And so depression, frustration. Boys are a little bit better at covering it up.
Yeah.
And they'll cover it up in their video games.
Yeah.
Cover it up staring at TVs. So, yeah. We see a ton of
that. Don't you think that also just drives home the importance of us as dads and as parents to come alongside of our kids? Because again, it would be no different that if we're expecting our school systems to raise our kids, we're failing our kids as parents. And man, this just, again, I think just what you're speaking of just drives home that idea that, man, the time that we do have with our kids away from the school system, whether it be summertime or just in the evenings, how important it is to reiterate some of the values that your spouse and you're trying to have in your home. These ideas of helping your kid find their purpose and let them know that they have value, that what they can bring to the world, right? And I think it just drives home this idea, because I would agree that I think in a large kind of very generalized statement, the school system is not doing a great job at that. That it's just so important that we as as the parents, especially as the dads, are stepping into that role and helping our kids find that value.
Right. It's kind of like faith, right?
Yeah.
Like I want the church to support the faith efforts that I'm putting out, but the church is not the sole director of faith development in my kid. And the same is with education and discovery of gifts. Like I want the school to support what I'm doing here, but if I'm not driving it at home, then I get what I get from the school.
Yeah,
okay?
I mean, we talked all the time of running stuff through like the God filter, right? So the kids come home with something they heard at school, whether good, bad, or indifferent. Right. Running that through a filter that actually shows the true value that our kids are having.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll like this.
All right.
You'll like this because I'm weird. So instead of a GPS,
all right,
I invented a GPM.
That means gallons per minute at work for me.
Is it?
That's gallons per minute. That's how many gallons per minute are coming through your
this is gallons per minute. I'm going to call this the guided purpose map for your kid.
All right.
Guided purpose map, the GPM.
All right.
And the idea here is, think of it like a GPS with the idea of, right now we are so lazy when it comes to direction. It's pathetic. Like I don't go anywhere without my GPS at least available. And it's really cool because I can go to totally foreign places that I've never gone to before. And you could say, hey, like, could you go over to the Target store or whatever? And I'd be like, oh yeah, like here, put it right in. And so it's made my life really easy and less frustrating when it comes to finding direction. Okay. Well, the whole idea here of getting a guided purpose map for our kids is something that we oftentimes neglect to think, like GPS. How did GPS come about? Somebody had to build that.
Right.
Somebody had to create those maps between satellites and crazy engineers and all this stuff. Somebody built it. And I'm just now benefiting from it.
Yeah.
But the idea of it just all of a sudden showed up one day is just short-sighted thinking. That's not how things actually work. And I think that's what, we all would like someday. Like I would like I've said this many times. I just wish God would just show me, like put a big billboard right in front of me. Hey, stupid, do this,
Yeah. I want God to be like the voice in the GPS that says, turn right here.
Turn right.
I mean, you turn. You made a wrong turn, Kyle. What are you doing here?
I don't think my God voice would sound like that. Mine would be like, hey, idiot. Turn around whenever possible.
No, I think this idea of the GPM, I think that's pretty cool. And in writing this show, you would reference a podcast that I had a chance to kind of just start to listen to, and I know you kind of dove into it. So you want to kind of talk a little bit about this podcast?
So if you get a chance, go back. This is a couple weeks old. So from the time that you and I are recording right now, Jordan Peterson had a guest, Dr. Temple Grandin, and I listened to a lot of Peterson's stuff. But when I first started listening to this show, I'm just going to be honest with you, I was like, oh my gosh.
That when you asked me if I listened to it, I said, yeah, it's hard to listen to.
Yeah, and I just, the lady comes right out and explains it too, so I'm not being offensive or anything, but she's autistic, and she's 75 years old now.
Yeah, she did say that, yeah.
And she's socially awkward, all right? Her brain goes like 100 miles an hour, and her voice is right there with it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can listen to this. But I think because of a little bit how I'm wired, I'm always curious about people like that, because I do, like, obviously she's on Peterson's show because she's done something great, and so as much as my ears want to say turn her off, I can't listen. My brain's like, no, I want to hear what she's got to say. And so I listened to her, and the strangest thing, right? So she grew up as a little girl, and she used to go to her aunt's farm, cattle farm, somewhere out west, I believe it was, and she got this really sort of, I'll call it like an innate sense of how the cattle communicated, functioned, worked as a herd. Like she understood it as a little bitty girl. And she was doing things and saying things about how the cattle were working. And like people were looking at her like, it's a cow, like, but she got it. And so it just continued, and she actually got into the whole meat processing industry in terms of from the farm, from the ranch to the meat processing, like how do we treat animals better? So bottom line is like she's a major human right or animal rights activist. Now she's not like save all the animals. She's like, no, let's treat them with dignity here, and let's learn to understand them. Yeah. And so anyway, she gets into this whole, she's written books and stuff, but her whole deal is like talking about how she thinks. Yeah. And helping us to understand how other people think. And the idea here is she could socially be totally kicked to the curb because she just does not fit in well. But the idea that she's a strong personality and she learned how she had value because of how her brain worked. And now that's her quest in her final years is how do we help kids know what they're about? Yeah. Okay. And it's pretty cool stuff. And she's quick to attack the schools. She's like, you've taken out everything that has to do with trades. You've taken out all of the hands-on courses. You've taken out all of the theater. You've taken out gym classes. You've taken out over half of how the brain works. You've taken it out. Is no longer a substantial part of your curriculum. And now you're wondering why you have higher rates of kids thinking they want to be animals, or kids questioning their gender, or kids being depressed. You've taken away half of their direction in life, and you're wondering why you have these problems. And so the more you listen to her, you're like, wow, she's just really spot on in this. And I will say I believe she's spot on because I actually worked with it in the schools every day. Yeah,
and I think, from what I've listened to so far, I think it feeds right into the show well because she talks about this idea of the way in which she learns and the way she thinks, and how she said she didn't realize that till she was in her 30s. That at that point, that was when she realized that other people weren't seeing things in imagery, right? She talks a lot about that and how that really kind of moved her into a place of kind of finding that purpose because, the society that she grew up in or whatever didn't really help her and didn't really assist her in that venture of kind of figuring out her purpose, which again plays right into, what we're going to talk about. about.
Yeah. She talks about the idea of visually she can pick something up instantly.
Yeah.
Like she could see how a building is built wrong or right just on instantly walking by. And she'll tell you, but I can't do the math to actually tell the engineer per number why it's wrong.
Yep.
I just know it's wrong by the visual.
Yep.
And then she says, but I then get with the engineer person who can do the math.
Yep.
And so she talks about the collaboration. The collaboration is essential to, I need the visual person, I need the math person, I need the verbal person, and the collaboration coming together. This is how great companies become even greater. This is how families become greater.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do not listen to her at more than 1 time speed, I will tell you. I try to listen at 1.25 speed, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
You get car sick and everything else, don't you? She was something, but I just found myself laughing at her.
Yeah.
Because you know what? One thing about her is she's really confident in who she is.
Yeah,
like
she is.
I would say she probably beat herself up at times in life because maybe she was rejected. But at her age, I think she's flipped the bird to anyone she needed to flip the bird to, and she's like, "This is who I am, and I know who I am, and I'm confident in that." And so she's now on a totally different quest to help other people do that.
Good deal.
All right.
Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this show.
All right. So here are some things that we can work on. First off, the idea, the assumption here that everybody's made for a purpose. Jeremiah 29:11. You guys have all heard this before. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil. Give you a future and a hope. The idea here is, listen, God knows who he creates. He knows your combination of gifts. He gave them to you. And it doesn't matter what the world says. It doesn't matter whether it meshes in well with a certain grading scale that somebody else man-made or created. God created you for a season, for a purpose. And so I think it's really important that first and foremost you get that in your head.
Yep. So you kind of jotted down 12 different ways to help you develop your GPM or your guided purpose map. And man, this first one, we have talked a lot about this idea of developing your own value systems. And man, what a great way to test that than tonight at dinner after you get done listening to the show, ask your kids, what does our family stand for? What are the things you know? And we've done this in our house. I actually just was like, hey, Ava, Mia, what do you think mom and daddy stand for? What do you think the values of this house? And they rattled off like 4 or 5 things, and it was like, all right, something is sticking here, right? And so I think, if you and your spouse have value systems that you want to put on your kids, and you're not sure, I think it's a great way to do a check-in with your kids, because if they don't say what you and your wife are thinking, or what the value system that you want to be putting onto them, it's not their fault, right? It's you and your wife need to take a step back and say, how are we approaching our kids, right? Let's do this a little bit different.
Man, the value system is critical, and I'll explain to you here why. She Temple Garden actually gets into this, and she's talking because she's like, listen, if you take a smart person and they have a misguided value system, you very likely just created a criminal. Okay, so a lot of people think that prisons are filled with idiots. No, prisons have way more than their share of brilliant people.
Yeah.
But brilliance without a value system is dangerous. Okay? And so that it's so important that right off the bat, we teach our kids a value system. And obviously we're Christian, right? And so we know exactly where to go to get our value system and to say, here's how we treat people. Here's what we do with our gifts and resources. And here's how we do to life. And so the very first thing that you as a dad need to do is you better define yours. If you don't know what yours is. And so things that should be coming out of your mouth when you're thinking about this are things like, what do you do in terms of trust and honesty and respect and all these different things? How are you handling money? What's the right, scenario of how you would handle a certain situation? These are where you get your brain seeing how you have developed a value system. But it's even more critical. You want to develop a value system before you just go out there and discover that you're genius at something. For the simple reason of now you have boundaries to work with your gifts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
You have to have that. Otherwise, you could get yourself in big trouble.
Yep. Yeah. This next one, I've referenced the 5 marks of a man before. I know I've talked about it here because it was impactful for my walk with my relationship with Christ. This idea of having a vision. And creating that personal vision statement for yourself. And I just think, Brian Tomes that does the Man series talks that boys live day to day and men have a vision for the future. And man, I think there is so much to be said about this idea as a man having a vision for what you want your life to look like, have a vision for what you want your kids' life to look like, for your relationship with your wife. I just think there's so much good that comes along with not just living day to day and just whatever happens. This idea of setting yourself up for long-term success and whatever that venture looks like. I just think there's a lot to be said about having a vision and having a vision statement. I've talked before at work, we have a mission statement. We have a statement, it's in my wallet. It basically tells us we're going to risk a lot to save a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to risk a little to save a little bit, right? And man, I think when you believe in what your mission is, man, it's so much easier to go out and try and achieve that, right? Not to say there's not going to be bumps in the road, not to say you're not going to fail at some point, but having a vision statement, having a goal. I know I'm the type of person, I need something, I need to see something to go achieve it, right? So I have to have that vision in my mind to go achieve it.
Yeah, I like that whole idea, and then the idea of encouraging your kids to dream.
Yeah.
All right. So a lot of times kids, I was a dreamer. So this was hard for me to understand that somebody couldn't dream, because some people have to see things and then they can start to figure out what they want to do. Other people can see things in their mind and know what to do. And that would be a little bit more of how my brain was wired. Like I could just kind of close my eyes and have a vision for how I wanted something to be. And okay, now I have it. And so the idea here is teaching your kids how to create vision, however they would do that, whether they have to write it out, whether they have to draw a picture of it, whether they have to verbalize it. Like, tell me what your best vacation would be. All right. Okay, cool. Well, I think it'd be really cool if we could go to Hawaii and be on a beach. Okay, cool. Let them get the ability to create vision.
Yep. What's your thoughts on number 3 was developing a growth mindset. What was kind of your thoughts on behind that?
So growth mindset is this idea that the opposite of growth mindset is fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is the idea that everything should be the way it is. Everything should be a certain way, and it's very rigid. And so growth mindset says, well, I don't know. Does everything need to be that way? And if it's not, what's that mean to you? So if you, a growth mindset says that when things go wrong, you don't spend a lot of time beating yourself up. You go, oh, crud. Well, that didn't go well.
Right.
What do I need to do? What can I learn from it so that I can come back and revisit it? Versus a fixed mindset says, well, that didn't go right. I quit. Okay, so fixed mindset people get stuck. They get stuck, and then they turn into these people that we call victims. Well, it never worked out for me. It never worked out for me. It never worked out for me. And it's like, what didn't work out for you? You're the one that has to work out for you, dude. You're the one that has to work out for you. You have to become the problem solver. So teaching your kids from a very early age that if they lose the game, if they didn't get the grade, if they didn't get something they wanted, to not allow them to be stuck and stagnated in the loss, but to say, well, what are you going to do about it? Yeah. Tell me what you can do. How can you grow through it? What can you do differently?
Yep. Man, this next one, again, these are just 12 different ways to try and help develop and try and, learn why we were created. I think this next one is spot on. Again, here at Strong Dads, we are faith-based, and I think this is huge. I mean, if you look all through Scripture, this idea of serving others, how important that is as just your walk with Christ. But I just think, man, just the fulfillment that you get from serving other people or just serving in general, man, I just think there's so much that you can gain from that. A personal, obviously, while in the process of serving other people, what you actually gain and the fulfillment that you get, I think just reiterates this idea that, man, if you want to know why you were created, go serve other people, and what that's going to bring to you is crazy. It's so good.
Yeah, as Christians, we are called to not come to be served, but to serve, which is very contrary to how I think we want to operate. We want people to serve us and think we're important, but really it's to look the other way and serve others. And we know that mental illness, when somebody's suffering from severe anxiety or depression or any of these things, they will get stuck and cannot even think about serving others because they're so obsessed with themselves. And so mental illness naturally gravitates you to a very heavy dose of narcissism. And so one of the things that we know is if you want to help somebody with depression is to get them to go out and serve. Okay, listen, I know you feel miserable today, you don't have any energy, but let's go down and serve those people who were just hit by the flood. Let's go down, let's get a chainsaw and go down and cut some trees up for the people that got hit by the hurricane. And the idea then that you're starting to see things through other people's eyes in service takes the focus off of you. And so service is a great way to deal with some of our anxieties and depression.
I love it. Yeah, this next one, Merle, I don't know if I've actually ever talked to this idea of exploring your passions. Man, I know quite a few guys that I work with, but I will say for sure one of my favorite things about Jenny that she allows me to chase after my passions. And it is so awesome to have someone that supports me because sometimes my brain goes a little crazy, right? And I'm like, I'm going to jump into this venture, right? But man, I think there's so much good about challenging yourself, chasing after passions that you have. Right now I'm in the midst of chasing after woodworking because I'm like, I love it, right?
Yeah, you're a nutcase.
I love it, right? and if Jenny were to kind of like, be like, well, hold on, like, it doesn't make, but she allows me to chase after my passions. And I think how important that is for us to allow our kids to do the same thing. Man, allow your kids to chase after passions. Again, within the confines, going back to the first thing of having that value system, of making sure it fits in the value system of your family. But because I know guys that their wives, they don't allow them to whatever, if their passion is hunting, if their passion is, whatever else, that if their spouse doesn't allow them to chase after that, man, it creates resentment in that. And I think the same could be said about with your kids. If we're not allowing our kids to chase after their passions and what they want to do and their loves, because if it's not the same passion I have right now, my girls love to dance. They love to dance.
And you just love that.
And it's hard for me because that's not me, right? But what would that say about me if I say no?
Oh,
nope.
And you would basically suffocate them. Yeah, you would shut them down, snuff them out. I think you just bring up a great point there, and part of the challenge is just what you just said. On the second part of that was, I want to pursue my passions, but sometimes I forget that other people in my home also have to pursue their passions. And so part of the way the family works here is all of us kind of starting to even identify. So, hey, Mia, what's your passion? Or, of course, you probably wouldn't use the word passion, but what do you like to do?
Exactly.
Hey, but what do you like to do? And then making sure that we can incorporate ways that everybody gets to feed that. What a great way for your kids to start to grow. And, and that's hard because sometimes if you're feeding your passion, that means I got to be the one helping you get it. That means it's coming out of me. And so my selfishness then is then I go back to number 4. I got to learn to serve. All right. Here, number 6. Number 6 is, I really went down to number 6 on our list here because when I was listening to Dr. Temple Grandin on Peterson's show, it took me back to my school days when I was a counselor in the school, and teaching people how their brain thinks. Because if you don't do this, you will get trapped in whatever exposures you get in terms of how they allow your brain to think. And so if you're relying on the school, as we said earlier, if you're relying on the school to teach this, you may be in trouble. Now, not all schools and not all, I know, like, I work with great teachers, and many of them were very aware of these things and try to incorporate these different ways. But I'm gonna use really simple language, but there's like different. You can look up like the types of different intelligences or whatever. But in simple language, like there's people they have great speaking intelligence, like they're word smart when it comes to verbal. There's people who are word smart when it comes to reading and writing. Okay, and it's not, you could be verbally smart, but not necessarily writing smart. Okay,
right.
So like they're different smartnesses. There's the idea here of math smart. Physically smart. Like we see a lot of boys, man, who are kinetically, like, my youngest son, he's off the charts smart when it comes to how his body functions. Okay. But he doesn't do well in school.
Yep.
All right. And so, man, my wife and I are working hard to say, okay, we got to get this boy out being physical.
Right.
Music smart. Like there's none of that in my family. But man, I love people that are musically smart. Like they just get it and they have a whole different understanding of how to communicate that way. People smart, how well you read people. Obviously, I would think that might be one of my higher areas, just because like I have to learn to read people well.
Sure.
In the business that I do. So people smart, and then self smart, like how well you understand yourself, your own awareness of things, your weaknesses, your strengths. You really have a good understanding of who you are and how you're projecting out. So, so those are just some of the different areas of how your brain works. And you kind of have to actually do a little study in that. And as a parent, you have to help guide your kids. Like if you see your kid really excelling in one area and not so much in another, then help define that a little bit more clearly for them.
Yep, man. This next one, this idea of practicing, gratitude and thanks. We're coming off the back end of the holiday season, right? Christmas season.
Yep.
And man, what a great way to see if that's something you're allowing your kids to do. I mean, my goodness, if at Christmas time, if it was give, and or take, all your kids all want to do is take another gift, and there was no time to stop and actually show gratitude towards people that are giving you the gifts. I think maybe that's a good little test that we just had to see what value we're actually allowing. If those value systems that we are hopefully putting on our kids, if it's working.
Yeah. Well, teaching gratitude and thanks to your kids is important because it's how you teach your kid how to appreciate the wiring of other people. Okay.
Yeah.
So the idea, like your kid can very much get trapped into their own way of seeing life. And so the idea here is we have to be able to see what other people bring that is good. Okay. And so having gratitude and thanks for, you know what, man, I could never do what you can do.
Yeah.
And so that's how we help our kids see that even though that person's not wired like you are, they benefit you, right? They give to you.
I know. I've said it a lot of times, man, I'm really glad there's engineers in this world.
Oh, yeah.
My brain doesn't work that way.
No,
I am so grateful that there's people whose brains work that way.
Yeah. Number 8 here is turn your pain and failures into purpose. It's a little bit on the growth mindset. Every failure, every pain has to be dealt with. And so some of that comes through in what the word we use is grief, right? When we have a failure, when we have a loss, we can get in a grief stage. And grief then gets, grief is the process of how you're working through the loss, but it is a choice on how you work through grief. And I'm not trying to simplify that. Like, I'm not trying to say, well, you had a loved one die, just get over it. No, not at all. But your brain's going to have to process through that process, okay? And the idea here is, okay, how can I use pain? How can I use a failure in a beneficial way? All right? This is a touchy situation. All of a sudden, you lose your child. We've talked about this in other shows. You have there's an accident, there's an illness, you lose a child. Are you really telling me I'm supposed to turn that into a purpose? Yeah. And my point is, yeah, I am. I don't know how it's going to happen,
right.
But yeah, you can't let your son, your daughter die and just live in anger. You have to, if you're really going to live on purpose here, you have to say, okay, what are we going to make good out of this? What was the purpose? And that's where foundations get started. That's when I lost the use of my shoulder from the accident through a surgery. I was pissed, man. I was pissed, and so I fretted for months, and finally I was like, okay, so what am I going to do with this? And from that came a couple different inventions, and I don't give me credit for that. It was just like the good Lord said, do something, buddy.
Yeah. No, I love the second part of that of again turning your pain and failures into purpose. What can I do with this?
Yeah,
I do, and I just think there's kind of taking that step back again. I'm a firm believer in the grieving process. You go through a pain, you go through a failure, a death that you spoke of. Go through that grieving process, but at the back end of that, there has to be a realization that it's on you now. Do something with it, and I think there's just so much good that comes from that.
Yeah. Number 9 is spend time with people who inspire and challenge you, and so.
So good.
I'm not always good at this.
Oh, it's so good though, Merle.
I mean, like I find myself sometimes withdrawing.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden I realize, man, I need to mix it up with some people.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I do that. I think it's just a level of simplicity. The more people you get involved with, the more people you have to manage in your mind. Like, oh, I'm going to see so and so or whatever. But the idea, like, I know the benefit of being coached. I know the benefit of somebody challenging me. And so that's something that I know that if I'm going to get better, I have to be able to kind of expose whatever I am to somebody and be able to handle what they're going to say back. You and I tease each other a lot, but sometimes you have to be able to look at me and say, Merle, why are you doing that?
Right.
Like what's going on with that? And so that's how growth takes place.
I've said for a long time, I love being the dumbest person in a room. Like, I love it, but I also hate it, right? Because it's very uncomfortable. Like, golly, these guys know a lot about the fire service. They know how to do XYZ tactics, and I struggle with that. But man, to me, that's one of the reasons why I love going to trainings, because I'm surrounded by other guys who are much better at this profession than I am. And man, the just being a sponge and absorbing that, and man, it's challenging. Again, it's like the double-edged sword. I love it, but I hate it, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's so good to put yourself in those positions, to be challenged, to have questions answered, to have questions, to have questions asked of you, and you not know the answer.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I have to take a step back. I have to go find those answers. I think there's a lot of growth that comes from that.
Yeah. Versus, you just got me thinking there. The insecurity in myself to say, well, if I'm not the best, I'm not even going to show up because I don't want to be embarrassed or humiliated. So humbling yourself enough to say, no, I'm okay with being the dumb guy in the room. I like what you're saying there.
Yep.
Number 10, teaching your kids that they always need to be learning. They always need to be learning. Now, some traditional ways might be, well, they should be reading. Well, we know with men, that's not always easy, okay? Yeah. And so really, when I talk about learning, especially these days, there's just so many different avenues to go out and to learn. But the idea of learn, read, study, listen to whether it's podcasts, get your hands on, go to trainings, like if we're going to help our kids find their map, their guided purpose map, if we're really going to help them, then learning can never be shut down. I would say, my dad was always somebody who was a hands-on learner, but he was not good at promoting a lot of learning through reading and things like that. And so I kind of shut down part of that earlier on, like, well, my dad doesn't read, so I'm not going to read. And that's probably one of those things that I do not want to pass on to my kids. Like, nope, like whatever it is, whether it's reading, watching, listening, doing, always the idea of there's something more to take from this.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Almost every night at dinner, Ava will say, "What'd you learn today, Daddy? What'd you learn today, Mommy? What'd you learn today, Mia?" And man, there's just I have a captain at work that's something he talks like when he comes to our firehouse. Hey, today I don't care what we do, we need to make sure we learn something.
Yeah.
And again, to me, this goes back to the last point of spending time with people who can challenge you. Man, that is a great way to learn something. That if you're surrounded by people who are going to challenge you, who are going to ask you the hard questions, or going to ask questions of of you and expect you to either know the answer or know where to find it, because man, the learning that can come from that, because in a roundabout way, even if you have a belief system, if they ask you a question, it may challenge that belief system. It's going to make you dig deeper. Okay, this is why I believe why, because I think finding the why behind what you believe in is so important, and it goes back to this idea of learning something. Man, I just think having someone that challenges you, in everything you're doing is a great way to learn something.
Yeah, for sure. So number 11. And this is a tough one for a lot of people. Number 11, practice self-forgiveness as well as forgiveness of others. When you're think about the GPS and you think about driving and you think about traffic, in other words, you're not the only guy on the road, right? Driving and traveling would be a whole lot easier if I was the only dude on the road.
Yep.
Okay. But in real life, there's all kinds of other people out on the road. And all of us carry our own weaknesses and mistakes. And the idea here of knowing that the mass of humanity is all in this together, that you are going to make mistakes. So don't spend a lot of time beating yourself up. This goes back to the growth mindset again, okay? So get over yourself, forgive yourself. Don't we've talked many times, you get to watch game film one day, okay? Review your mistakes and then forgive yourself and move on. But the other side of that is you've got to be learning and teaching your kids how to forgive others. There is going to be a guy who cuts you off in traffic. It is going to happen. It's not going to take long for your kids to be driving and they're going to realize that they're going to get somebody that breaks the rules of driving. And if you get your kids stuck on that, it will alter their driving. In other words, they might be a mad driver now, and so now they're driving with road rage because somebody cut them off, and it will be a distractor from them actually driving well to where they want to go. So forgiveness of yourself and for others in this whole big fluid process of your kids getting to their purpose is really an important part of just the daily journey.
Yep. Well, this next one, I probably shouldn't take this one, Merle. No, this last one, the last step is taking care of yourself. This is something I'm quickly finding out as I'm not old yet.
Oh, you're getting there, man.
I'm getting
there. I see actually a gray hair.
Oh, really? But this idea of taking care of yourself, that your health is important to your purpose, to your kids' purpose, to the value that you can bring to your family. Your health has to be a part of this list of figuring out that your guide to trying to find your purpose and why you were created. Your health has to be a part of that. In Scripture, it talks about your body is the temple, right?
Yep.
And you have to take care of what God is given you. And we would be foolish to just waste it away with whatever that looks like. Whether getting involved in different things that are not going to build you up and help you with your health. And again, I'm probably not the best person to say this because I don't do the best of job. I'm trying to get better. But man, I just think there's so much good that can come from, this idea of, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about this idea of staying healthy and taking care of yourself in this idea of trying to find your purpose.
Well, there's, Kyle, I'm not going to let you beat yourself up too much on that because the idea here is you don't actively abuse yourself in a way that destroys your temple. Okay. Yeah. There's always ways to do things a little bit better.
Sure.
But the idea here, especially with our younger kids, the idea that they can do some heavy duty damage to the temple that they have. The idea that, I could have a kid who could potentially be a college or even pro level sports athlete, but early on they're playing with drugs. They're playing heavy duty with alcohol, things like this. They're involved with criminal things, cheating, lying, stealing. Like these are things that are not taking care of yourself that are going to take you off of your map. Okay. Yeah. And so, I could always tune the engine a little bit better, but the idea here is keep the engine running and don't put bad stuff into it that's going to get it to the sideline.
Yeah. Yep, I like it, man. As we went through all those 12 things, if that seems like a lot to gravitate, to grab a hold of, a lot to begin to get our guided purpose map that we were talking about, that GPM, man, I think what a great way to start the year off. Let's just go after a couple of them. Let's not try and tackle all 12 right away. And then again, we talked last week about let's create habits.
Yep.
Instead of just saying, hey, we're going to achieve all 12 of these things. Let's actually go in. Let's put a strategic map together, and let's just try and do 1 and 2 for this upcoming week. Again, this is a journey. This is a marathon, right? This isn't just a sprint. So in the upcoming week, let's just talk about with you and your spouse, this developing your value system. Be clear and define it for yourself, for your family, and then the second one is create a vision statement for yourself. Let's just go after those two, because again, there's so much trickle down effect that happens when you establish that value system for you and your family, and then you have a personal vision statement for yourself. So let's do that this week.
Sounds like a good plan. So anyway, guys, I hope this is helpful, not just for yourself, all right, but that you see it from a dad perspective, as we're strong dads here, that you see it as like, man, these are some things I want to be a lot more aware of when it comes to raising my kids.
Yep.
Because your kids are totally different wiring than you are, and you are the adult, so you really kind of need to help see how they're different, and then how you can get them to develop to their fullest potential. So I hope it's helpful in that way. Guys, we want to thank you for listening. We ask that you give us 5-star ratings, that you share the show. These are all things that help us out. If there's something that we can help you out with, reach out to us, okay? Whether you come to Rock Solid Families and we set up a coaching appointment of sort, or whether you just want to go onto our website, just do us a favor and reach out and get some help. Don't sit around and get trapped by that, okay?
Yep.
Our website is rocksolidfamilies.org, and our phone number is 812-576-7625.
Good deal.
Good deal.
Thanks so much, Casey Outdoor Solutions and Quality Auto Mart, for coming alongside of us. Really do appreciate them, man. We're venturing into another full year, Merle. We're doing it.
Oh, we got a hot show coming next week.
All right,
we're going to fight a little bit.
Oh,
we're going to fight a little.
Bring
bit.
it on.
Bring it, bro.
Sounds good, man. I hope you guys are having a good week. Go out there and be some strong dads.
Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.